I'm delighted to introduce tonight's speaker, Hamlyn Jones. Lynn is a plant physiologist and an emeritus professor at the Universities of Dundee and Western Australia, where he has studied for many years on the adaptation of plants to environmental stresses. And in recent years, he's concentrated on improving the methods for plant identification by less experienced users and on the development of plant ID apps for use in the field. So, as part of this interest, he's undertaken several studies of the accuracy and the use of image recognition apps for automatic identification of plants that is suitable for use by non-expert botanists and for citizen science projects. So, Lynn, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. And if you'd like to share the screen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk this evening. I hope that the weather isn't too bad in other places of the country. It's slightly windy here, but I gather it's a lot worse in Northern Ireland. So what I'm planning on doing today is just introducing a little bit about plant ID apps and actually demonstrating a range of the most commonly used. I'm assuming that many of you will have tried one or more apps, but I think it is worth seeing what they can do and deciding which might be of most use for your applications. Because the best app is that there is no one best app. There are some which are good for some things and some which are good for others. Now, you can see the screen, can you?
Yes, we can.
But can you see my presentation?
We can see trees at the moment, Hamlyn.
No. So let's get the presentation up, which is what we should have. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Try it again. That should be better. Is that correct?
I'm not
Good.
seeing anything just yet. Can anybody else in the Q&A pop a comment in if they can see the presentation?
Can you not see the presentation?
No, no.
No.
At the moment.
This is the problem we had when we tried it out before.
Gosh, we're awfully sorry. We'll just take a moment to fix this up. It was working just before we started and always the way. Now it's just gone. So we'll just get this fixed up. Thank you for your patience.
I do not understand this. So, Zoom. So, let's try sharing again. Is that better?
That's better. Thank you. So we can see your
I
title
don't know
page.
what went wrong there.
Don't worry.
Sorry
Thank
about
you,
that.
everyone, for your patience.
Okay, we're in real live mode again. Sorry about that. So you will all be familiar with standard plant ID keys. Till recently, that was all we had, other than picture books and so on. But the problem with most plant ID keys is several-fold. Most of them are dichotomous. So if you go wrong early, you're likely to go completely wrong. And they have a range of other problems. Um, for example, often they will have, certainly for beginners, unfamiliar technical words which you have to go off and look up to see what's wrong, what they mean. Another problem often is that the questions, the divisions, are difficult and often subjective. It's often difficult to decide whether the leaves are ovate or long and narrow, for example. Then, of course, what is really the killer is that often you will have a question fairly early in the key which asks about the fruit, and you don't have any fruit. So you can do without keys and find the best picture from picture books, or in recent years, we've had smartphone apps. These provide a real alternative. So I thought I'd just briefly introduce a little bit of background to the use of smartphone apps and how they work. Until or 1990s, we had no computer recognition available. From about 2000, there was a large interest in developing image analysis to extract features of plants and use them for identification. In this approach, what you do is you start off with acquiring a range of images of typical leaves, for example, of the plants you were interested in. Make sure they're nice, clear images. The next step was pre-processing these images, which involved, for example, converting them to grayscale, then converting them to binary, doing various digital smoothing processes and filtering. And then this led on to the next step, which was feature extraction. And for these leaf examples, you would extract a number of parameters, such as the length and breadth of the leaf, the angular dimensions, the area, the area overlain by the outline, and so on. These are sort of digital numbers which described the leaf. These were then used to classify them, and then using these numbers on an image, you would then decide what species it was. This was very sensitive to problems that it's very difficult to photograph leaves or plants in real environments, and you get messy pictures, and so it was rather restricted, this approach. But around the mid 2010s, 2013 or so, the deep learning approach was pioneered by Google, with Google Lens being introduced. This approach involved using vast databases of images, often collected from crowdsourcing or Google's scouring of the internet. And this approach is the basis for the generalist ID apps that there are out there, things such as Google Lens. The slightly alternative approach is used for many plant-specific apps. These use a more structured deep learning approach where the images to be input into the training database are curated by specialists and carefully planned so that they cover all aspects of the plant. And as an example here for just a set of 100 species, we show that these curated database will include pictures at the top left of the whole plant. Next one along, we've got pictures of the flower from the side, pictures of the flower from the full frontal, leaf top, leaf back, and so on. And if you look at any one of these squares for a species, you will have 100 images. With Google, for example, there are many thousands, not hundreds. So, since the development of these deep learning algorithms, there's been an absolute explosion of plant ID apps in recent years. I did a very quick search recently, and there were well over 40, many of which are free. But as some of you may have discovered, a number of them aren't necessarily all that good. Uh, they're very diverse in what they aim to do. Some apps are specific to wild plant species, some focus on garden plants. Uh, Unfortunately, many for us are focused on the US, while other apps are more generalist, such as Google Lens. So, in what follows, I'll just talk about a few of the better or more widely used free apps. And this is just an extract of some of the apps that I have on my phone, and I will certainly talk about most of the ones uh, on here, particularly the ones near the top of this image. And I thought what I'd do now, before we actually go into analysis of this and what we should be doing with apps, I thought I'd actually take you through examples of using each of these apps. So we'll attempt, if the technology works, to go through some demonstrations, and with luck, I better just switch on my phone. Um, just switching on my phone. Um, there, got the phone on. And then let's just show this phone on the screen. Uh, and with luck, you should now see my phone.
Yes, we can see that now.
So what I'm going to do now is just go through 6 or 7 of these apps and try them on a few random examples of species. The weather was so awful, I didn't go out and collect any real plants to do it on. So I'm going to do it on photographs. Now, let's just try flora incognita. In case, I should say there's no particular order that I'm going through these apps. I'm not particularly recommending the first app more than the second or anything like that. Flora incognita has a home screen which looks like this. If you click on the left-hand button, it gives you a list of all the species that it has in its database for the area that you're looking at. In this case, in your area, it shows potential ones. The right-hand flower is where you have your records kept, and the center one is to identify. And it generally asks you, as most of the other apps, to either take a photograph, which is the center screen there, and we can do that if I can find some things to photograph, documents, laptop, uh, plants. And let's try to start with, what should we start with? Let's just start with Amaranthaceae. Let's try a random. Amaranthaceae. There we are. Uh, Totally random images. So I've just picked up a random image and I'll take a photograph of that. And amazingly, as you can see, it's come straight up with the correct species. Now, a feature you'll note of Flora Incognita is it gives you a percentage accuracy at the top of the screen. You can see it reckons it's 99% certain that it's got the right species. It gives its name, information about it, and various further information, together with a map of where I am and not the full range. And it shows some of the other distribution points. They're rather faint on the screen, but it shows where it occurs around the UK. Now, to my mind, a slight problem with this app is it only gives us one option. Let's delete that one, discard, and we'll try it again on another species. Let's just see what we can find. Such as, let's try a less common species. See what it reckons about this. Yeah, so again, it reckons 99% and it's confident. And that it's Amaranthus deflexus, which is a rather uncommon pigweed. So it's quite good even on common species. I was thinking we would try something rather different. Let's try a grass, because grasses are more challenging often. I know, let's try one of these. Let's try that one. Now, you'll note that I've taken a photograph which included the flower head, but it's still uncertain. So this app then now asks us to do the leaf top. I don't have an image of the leaf top, so I'll just click it again. It's asking for fruits. I don't have it. So we can, in this case, we can just jump to the end by clicking on the forward arrow. Again, click on the forward arrow, click on the forward arrow. And interestingly, it has come up with the correct species yet again, marsh foxtail. Though, as you can see, it's rather less confident. It's only 69% confident. Okay, I think that's probably enough at the moment to do with this. We can always come back if you're interested later on. So let's try another app, Plant Net. And as with the previous, we have the option of using the center button, which takes a photograph, or we can use the little button on the left, which enables you to use a stored photograph. Now, taking a photograph with a mobile phone on a screen often leads to moire fringes and problems with the image. So it's if it's possible, it's always better to do it rather than photographing a screen, you take a photograph from the gallery. But let's just do that. So we'll try and find some images. Um, uh, let's go back to this. As you can see, I've got here an image of a grass leaf with a ligule. So I wonder how good an app will be on that. Uh, so I think we'll have to click the leaf, leave it to think. Ah, so it's come up with a species. It reckons that it's Alopicurus pratensis. In fact, it's Alopicurus geniculatus, as in the last one we were looking at. So it's got the wrong species, but for this app, you'll see it's thinking 18% confidence. Now, an important feature of a good app is that it has ready access to alternative pictures to check its identification. Uh, Now, I actually happen to know this one is Alopicurus geniculatus, and it's actually the fifth possibility it's selected. So it's not perfect, this particular case. But we do have lots of other pictures to compare it with. For example, this is a picture from its database, and you can see that the ligule is actually very, very different than the geniculatus ligule. It in fact has an enormous database. There are 2,385 flower photos in the database, and you can go through those to check the leaf and so on. So a great feature of this app is that it gives you a range of options, not just its best choice. And particularly if it's something completely new, it's particularly interesting that. Okay, let's just try something else. Find another app. The third one to look at is a thing called Obsidentify. Now, this one was originally developed by Dutch scientists, so originally was restricted to the Dutch flora, but since then its database has been widened, so it now works much more generally. So again, let's pick up using a stored image, and let's try it again. What did I say? Alopicurus geniculatus. No, wrong one. Let's go back. Well, we'll try that one first. Well, this one, it's got it correct. Marsh foxtail, 92% confidence, and it's got the correct species. Let's go back, try it again, try another picture. There, here we are, back with the image that we got wrong with PlantNet. Let's try this one. Interestingly, this one is 99% confident that it's marsh foxtail just from a photograph of the ligule and a small bit of the stem and leaf, which to my mind is absolutely amazing. I mean, totally astonishing. So Obsidentify is also a pretty powerful app. We've done PlantNet, we've done Flora Incognita. Now, a very different app is Seek. Now, Seek is the only app that I know of which doesn't require the internet to be on. All others, you can store a photograph and identify later, but Seek is the only one that works in real time without internet connection. So let's try. We click on the camera icon, and as you can see, straight away as we paste it, it comes up at the top of the screen. It shows you that it's Alipicurus geniculators. If we, even if we zoom in to other, so now it's less certain looking at that rather unhelpful part of the image. But even there, with that background, it's reckons it's Alipicurus geniculators. Sometimes goes back to just a grass. But the other, what I think is outstanding feature of this app is that it only gives you an identification to the level at which it's confident. For many plants, it'll just say, oh, it's a grass, or sometimes it'll say it's rosaceae and not give you the species or the genus. And I think it's a great advantage just doing what it can. So let's try another. Um, so Google Lens perhaps is one that most people have used. Let's just go back and try Google Lens on this. So this is why I try to encourage people not to use Google Lens. We can see that it's even come up with something in the wrong family. It's come up with our Alipicurus geniculatus as a spike rush in the Cyperaceae. And if you look further down its um, list of matches, almost everything is Cyperaceae, except we have ornamental grass seed, whatever that means, and so on. No, so it is. Google Lens hasn't worked very well on this. Let's give it something a bit easier. Should we change family? Give it something a bit easier. Let's go to Geraniaceae. Um, well, let's try Rhodium maritimum. So this is actually quite a difficult geranium, but let's try it. Again, it's again the wrong family and everything. It's decided this picture is a Leptinella, where in fact it's Geranium maritimum, C. geranium, Rhodium, C. stalkspill, Rhodium maritimum. However, if you scroll down the Google Lens suggestions, the first one at the top is actually the correct species, C. stalkspill, and several of the other matches are C. stalkspill. So it can be good sometimes, it just often isn't. And so it's one of the last ones I would normally go to. What else have we got? Okay, I thought I'd show you also a paid for app, which is feasible to use without paying for if you discard this first page by clicking with the cross in the top right-hand corner and then pressing the camera again, and we place the plant in the middle, press identify, It's very quick, this app. It's got the right genus. It's an erodium. It's just, however, it's decided it's Erodium circuitarum. And a disadvantage of this app is that it only gives you one option. It doesn't give you the alternatives, which some of the other apps will do. Okay. So let's just see how we're doing. Well, I think for the moment that'll do adequately. Just giving you, we can always try some more things in the question Q&A at the end if you're interested. So let's just remove that and carry on with the talk. So various apps that we've looked at. Oh, I didn't mention iNaturalist. Perhaps we can come back to that later. No, perhaps I should do iNaturalist because it has a rather different way of presenting its results. Um, uh, so to use iNaturalist, you need to click on the plus at the very bottom right-hand corner of this screen. And then we can, let's take photos. And I'm wanting let's go back to this erodium that we were looking at and see what iNaturalist makes of it. So we click on it, take a photo. Oh, you may be able to see if you look closely the moire fringes that I told you about. In the center of this image, there's a lot of stripes due to the interaction between the pixels on the camera and the pixels in the image on the screen. So we click. Here, it doesn't automatically give you an answer. You have to ask it. You click at the top. What did you see? And then it thinks and gives a range of answers. In this case, it says at the very top, we're not confident enough to make a recommendation. However, it may be one of the following suggestions, and it includes common storksbill, feverfew, and quite a wide range of possibilities. Cavernous crystalwort, which is a liverwort, musk storksbill, etc. In fact, I can't see it thinking at all of sea storksbill. Okay, so it's not very happy with that picture. Let's try it with an easier one. Uh, delete. Do you want to discard? Yes. Start again. Photo. There we are. There's a quite nice picture. See what it makes of that. You have to click on what did you see at the top. And this is a characteristic output screen from iNaturalist. If it's got a good idea what it is, it comes up with a little window at the top, which says, if you can see that, it's at the top of the screen, it says storksbills. It reckons it's in the genus storkbills. And then it gives ranked suggestions as to what it could be. including its first choice, common storksbill, Erodium circuitarum, which is the correct species. So this one gives you a nice range of alternative species, and it's giving you the idea that it's confident that it's storksbill. It's not so sure about the species, but it ranks them. Okay, so that covers that. And let's just go back and finish off.
Sorry, Lynn, just while you're changing over there, could you just repeat the name of the app that you mentioned that was paid for? Or could
So which one?
the app that you could pay for?
The pay for was Picture This.
Picture this, thank you.
So I'm trying to go forward. Okay, so just a few general words about apps and their accuracy, and you've already seen that many of them are absolutely spectacular. They can recognize things from things that you just would not believe, such as that ligule and little bit of a leaf. Now, apps are continually improving because people are adding images to databases, so there's a lot of crowdsourcing with almost all the apps. I first analyzed apps late 2019, early 2020, and I published a paper on that in AOB Plants. And here's the results that we got in 2020 with some of the apps I looked at in those days. On average, they were getting just under 50% of their images correct to the species, which at that stage I thought was absolutely spectacular. I reanalyzed exactly the same images with the same apps 3 years later in late 2023, early 24. And you can see that the accuracy has increased substantially with all of the apps we tested. Google Lens perhaps less so than the others, but things like PlantNet and Flora Incognita had gone up to the 80% or more accuracy of all the images we'd given it. I haven't included Plant ID in today's talk because that's a web-based system and generally has rather limited availability. Now, I did comment earlier that to me, it's more important that an app is confident that it's got the thing than just giving you an answer. So on the left-hand side of this slide, I've shown the percentage of all samples. On the right-hand side, some of the apps, notably Seek and Flora Incognita, frequently said they didn't know what it was. And in that case, I only took the samples where it admitted to knowing what the plant was, and you see a significant improvement, even in 2020 data. But if you look forward into the 2023 to 4 data, Flora Incognita was getting these spectacularly good results, as was PlantNet. And just mention a couple of recent, or there are 3 recent publications. I say recent, 2023 to 25. And Campbell et al. Reviewed a lot of the apps that we've been looking at and got some pretty spectacular results, particularly for PlantNet and a thing called LeafSnap, which is another paid app. So they came out very well, but you'll notice that they've given incredibly low accuracies to iNaturalist. Now that, I think, was a mistake, because what they did was they didn't recognize that that first item that was given by the app was in fact a genus. its statement of what the genus was. Other tests that have been done, Hart et al. Is the one which has done the largest scale testing of any paper. And again, they found PlantNet and LeafSnap to be doing particularly well, but they didn't look at iNaturalist and they didn't look at Flora Incognita. On the other hand, I and my wife Mandy, we did a test on a range of plants we could find over a few days wandering around Dundee a year or so ago. And again, we found Flora Incognita, PlantNet giving much the best scores of percentage correct, well over 85%. I had the privilege of visiting Australia about this time last year, where we went around some quite interesting parts of the country, particularly in South Australia and around Canberra, and tested a range of apps on the Australian plants we could find. Mostly, since I'm not very familiar with the Australian flora, we only used plants that were properly identified in botanic gardens or where we had pretty good evidence that they were what we thought they were. And again, we can see that I've got the UK readings on the left-hand two columns, the percent correct to species or percent to genus, correct to genus, with Flora Incognita and PlantNet again standing out as pretty good. But if we look at Australian species, we find much lower accuracy rates, much closer to what the UK apps were doing in the UK in 2020. And when the apps were confident of what they were seeing, again, we're now getting pretty high confidence levels. So iNaturalist, in fact, was the one which gave the highest rate readings, was the best one for the Australian plants. Now, I suspect that this is because iNaturalist has the best database. The other apps were being developed in Europe and have more users in Europe. So, what determines the success? How good an answer you're going to get? The first clear thing is you've got to take decent pictures of the plants you're trying to identify. Focus, you've got to get them focused. Ideally, you don't have a complex background, and you've got to get the zoom right. You've got to zoom in so you can see your plant, not just a minute component of a larger picture. So let's just look at this. Here, I attempted to take some of the worst pictures I could. And we had some coriander growing in the garden. And I took some pretty appalling pictures of it and thought I'd see how the apps did. And if we look at this, I've tested 4 of them on this image, PlantNet, Flora Incognita, Picture This, and iNaturalist. And you can see that almost every one is correct to species, in spite of the appalling quality of some of these pictures. In fact, PlantNet got all right. iNaturalist, Flora Incognita got 9 right, but none wrong, so it's 100% again. Picture This got 9 right and 1 wrong, but iNaturalist fell down a bit with only 6 correct to species. Similarly with Mexican fleabane or Guernsey fleabane, Erigeron carvinskianus. Again, so we've got some weeds growing in our garden. I took some pretty appalling photographs with shade hiding bits of them, or overlaid complicated pictures of leaves and so on. How did they perform? I mean, that even has more of another species in the photograph than the one it's trying to do. But again, 3 of the apps got 100% correct, and iNaturalist only failed, well, got 6 correct. So iNaturalist wasn't as good. Pretty outstanding, I reckon. Um, so even if you do take bad pictures, there's a reasonable chance you might get something useful. But um, sometimes you may not be able to see the characters that are in keys to distinguish species. For example, the ridging on the seed or whatever, as in Valerianellas. But the apps will sometimes pick up some other character which we don't know about to get to the right species. And apps are surprisingly robust. So, to sort of finish, key results so far, um, all have greatly improved since 2020. The best apps are extremely good, but none are perfect. And you've got to recognize that even 80% correct to species means that 20% or a fifth of your samples are wrong. So you shouldn't be too reliant on apps. And particular care is needed for difficult groups where the ID depends on critical characters. And equally importantly, if it's a rare species, there's usually less images in the database, and it is much less likely to come up with that species, and it'll come up with a common relative. So never use uncritically, always check independently. Either from your own knowledge, if you know enough. If not, you need to find some reference images, and you can search on the internet. Several of the apps, as I showed, have a good list of images already. You can go through those. Some apps allow the user to get expert or community confirmation. Things like iNaturalist, Flower Checker, and iSpot allow you to get community input to help you decide, or you can use social media. There are various Facebook groups and Twitter groups that will help. But really, you need to go back to using a flora or using internet keys. And one of the ones that I recommend is the one that I generated called Visual Flora. And this is one of the front pages shown on the right here. But I would recommend that, wouldn't I? So, criteria. For me, the app that makes the fewest mistakes, that's the most important character. Then a high percentage correct to the species. They need to be easy to use. I also think it's really important to indicate in some way how confident it is in the ID. Google Lens doesn't do this, and Picture This doesn't do this, and several of the others don't. It is useful if the correct species is in the list, and this is especially useful for experts. And in our Australian tests, we were looking often at species which were endemic to fairly small areas, such as Kangaroo Island. And some of the apps, iNaturalist particularly, often got the correct species. As I've said, it's useful to have a range of check images, and where it's uncertain, it should say so. And of course, it's useful if it works without the internet. So these are sort of gold star criteria. Although sometimes the best apps say that they don't know, most apps are, unfortunately, rather over-optimistic and will give you a species even if very uncertain. And actually, although it often doesn't give you the correct answer, the best for not over-delivering is actually seek. It may not be able to tell you in many cases, but when it does, it's frequently right. So I can't easily rank the apps. It depends on your own objectives, what you find most comfortable working with. And it depends whether you're doing botanical surveys, it's just general interest, or whether you're teaching, um, or whether you're just needing a suggestion for some totally unfamiliar species. Friend or foe? Quicker than books, easier. They might encourage, or they encourage beginners, and they provide useful suggestions for more expert people. And the good feature of using apps is you often get a precise location when you record it. So some of the disadvantages are that many people think that they inhibit the development of ID skills in beginners and less advanced people. The results that they produce need verification. And really, critically, it does lead, and it is currently leading, I suspect, to getting significant incorrect data into records. And their accuracy is not yet adequate, I don't think, for automated survey data, though such things have been tried. So some points about the various apps. Um, I think I might leave this list up. We'll just quickly look at it. The top three on here, which are my top three favoured apps, OBS Identify, PlantNet and Flora Incognita, all give a level of confidence. PlantNet is the only one which really gives a ranked list. Others which give ranked lists are iNaturalist, and Google Lens gives you lots of options. I should have mentioned that if you have an iPhone, the app built-in visual lookup app is pretty good, but I haven't reviewed that because I don't have an iPhone. Okay, I think thank you very much, everyone. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That was so interesting. We have some great questions that have come in, so we'll get through as many of these as we can. So, firstly, Leanne asked specifically about one app, but I think this kind of applies to all of them. Does Flora Incognita allow your submission to be entered into local county records or the National Biodiversity Network? And that's a really interesting question because I'd assume all of those apps each have different agreements with different databases and record centres. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think there's an easy way of getting Flora Incognita data in.
Yes.
But someone else may be able to correct me. But things like iNaturalist obviously go straight into databases and are currently very widely used by BSBI members entering data into the database. Unfortunately, some of the entries which are coming in via iNaturalist do not come with images which allow the referee to validate easily the records, which is a problem. So if people are submitting through iNaturalist, they really must include the images that they've based it on.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Um, PlantNet showed additional photos to check the suggestion with. Are these images confirmed by specialists?
Again, I can't be definitive on this, but a large proportion of the photographs on PlantNet have been checked by specialists, but I have a feeling that some may not be, but the majority certainly have been checked because this PlantNet was developed by an academic group in Germany, and they took a lot of care to validate the data that went into training their app. And so I think that the data will have been checked.
Great, thank you. Which, if any, apps that you're aware of might be good at identifying those really critical species like eyebrights or brambles or even, more challenging things like bryophytes. Have you any ideas?
Um, I would have greatest confidence in um, PlantNet or Flora Incognita
Okay.
for those. Um, but I don't think any of them can be guaranteed, um, and particularly since eyebrights are now being reclassified, um, simplified the classification of eyebrights, which might make it a lot easier, Jim.
I just say from the BSPI side, I know in the UK the iNaturalist records are brought across to our database once they can be checked for the UK, and then also iRecord as well, where our referees or iRecord verifiers might have an opportunity to look at those as well. So those are very good options if
Yes, so we do check those before they get into the database
exactly, yeah.
proper. So
Yeah.
so that's a great help. As long as we've got images, you can do it properly.
Yes. Okay, so just having a quick look through the other
Can
questions.
an app be recommended for bryophytes?
Mm.
Interestingly, I've tried that, and most were appalling. Um, but both Google Lens sometimes gave the right species, and OBS Identify sometimes gave the right species. But PlantNet and Flora Incognita, for example, are only trained on higher plants, so there's no hope from them.
Great. Martin asked a question. Can you please let us know which of the apps work from just a single photo and which allow a batch of photos for the one ID? So I think you kind of touched on that.
Well, several of them, like PlantNet and Flora Incognita, allow you to add, and OBS Identify. So the best ones all allow you to add a list of photos. But I've been slightly confused by this because, for example, when I try an image with PlantNet and get an answer from the first photo, and I'm unhappy with it, so I try some second, third, and fourth photos even, and it always comes up, in my experience, with the same answer, even if the second and third photos are better. Don't ask me why.
Hmm. That's great. Thank you so much for that. Okay, folks, so it's time to wrap up now, and I'm really sorry if we didn't get to your question in the Q&A. It looks like we answered most of those there. Um, but before we go, I'd just like to say thanks again to our funders, Dara, for making this talk and our entire project possible. Very, very much appreciated. And of course, a huge thank you so much, Lynn, for giving us your time and your expertise this evening. That's been fantastic. And thank you also to everyone who contributed questions. We really hope tonight has been helpful to those of you just getting started in your botanical journey. Or if you use plant ID apps or you're thinking about using them to help develop your botanical skills. Before we go, I just mentioned next week, our Tuesday webinar, will be looking at our New Year Plant Hunt Challenge, and we'll be talking about citizen science in a changing climate. So hopefully we'll see you then. And with that, thank you all so much for attending. Have a great rest of your evening,
And
everybody.
thank you for listening.
Thank you.